Hello?
Hello.
Hello? What's up, dude?
Not much. Sorry for interrupting.
Oh, no, no, you know
What's
what?
up?
Never say that.
Yeah.
Because you and I scheduled this a long time ago. You
Mhm.
did not interrupt anything. You're all good, dude.
Cool.
Uh, so,
Um,
so how you doing?
Doing okay. Yeah. I miss you every time I lose a game.
Fuck. I'm so sorry. We should honestly get a soundboard from me to you, and then you can play it every time you lose. Like, don't worry. Buck up. Just hit macro more.
Hmm. Okay.
So,
Um, so today I'm sorry for like trying to talk at the same time.
no, you're fine.
Um, today I'm trying to go through some Terran versus Terran.
Okay.
So I listed out a lot of questions that I have.
Sure.
Um, yeah. So mainly it falls into two categories, I think. The first one is like I think in general I don't know what's happening in Terran versus Terran, right? So all I know is the build order that you gave me, but to be honest, I don't know why you asked me to make a Raven, right? And that's and then sometimes I just lose it for no reason, and
Sure.
I don't know how to use it.
Okay.
Uh, then it falls into two branches. One branch is when the opponent tries to play standard, like Marine Tank Viking stuff like that. I don't know how to micro the units in the beginning of the game and in the engagement. And then the other branch is when the opponent is not doing something standard. I just completely black out. I don't know what to do.
Okay. So I would say, to answer some of your questions, like one of the big ones in the beginning was the Raven one. The reason why you make
Mhm.
a Raven in TvT is because there are like probably maybe like 15 build orders that could actually happen to you at the start of a game in TvT, and they can all be somewhat similar looking as well. And a Raven shuts down every one of them. Like it actually makes every build. It has there is this is probably the best way to say this. There is no opener that a Raven cannot add in some type of help against what you're dealing with. Like obviously some it's going to help a lot more than others, but a Raven in general is going to always be something that will be effective because you can use it defensively or aggressively once you get comfortable with it. Defensively is the better option if you're not really used to it yet because you just have it there and it's just there. But two of the big builds that someone can throw at you that will fuck you over if you don't have a Raven and you also don't have enough anti-air is Cloaked Banshees, or just straight like Banshees in general, but specifically Cloak because Raven actually has the ability to detect Cloak and that saves you from having to scan or from having to make turrets. And then also another one that's huge if you don't have enough anti-air is a Battlecruiser Opener. If a Terran player does either one of these to you, you're going to love that you have a Raven, and it's just there. Another thing the Raven does is it allows you to break siege tank lines whenever someone aggressively siege you. It's super helpful at helping you bust that open because you can either disable the tank or you can throw down auto turrets to take the shots of the tank so that when you engage, you're not just like having all your Marines and stuff just insta die as you're trying to walk into like 3 tanks or something.
Okay.
So it's mainly for defensive versatility is basically the best way to explain it in a simple way. Gives you a lot of range to deal with a lot of different potential openers that your opponent can throw at you. And then I
Yes.
or go ahead, sorry.
No, no. I was. And you said then.
So like your other question was like you're having problems in the mid game is what you said, I think, right?
So for the standard branch, in the beginning, right, the Reaper Hellion micro, I
Uh-huh.
don't know what's the point. So I just A move and sometimes I win, sometimes I lose. I
Sure.
don't know what am I supposed to do
And
to make it right. Yes.
remind me again, just sorry, remind me again your exact league so I can get a clear real.
Diamond 3.
Okay. So basically all you're doing with Reaper Hellion is you're basically pushing into someone's base, ideally, and you're slowing down them economically. Because Reaper Hellion does nothing to slow down your SCVs. It is super efficient and cheap to where your economy, like the only way it does slow down your SCVs for a second is because you have to make a factory a little bit quick, and you're mining a little bit of extra gas at the start of the game, so you're not making as fast of an expansion as if you just went for like one Rax command center essentially. Um, but basically, what you want to do with the Reaper Hellion is you want to make your opponent play defensive, or you want to make your opponent overall take some damage. And the only thing that really sucks for you is if they make a bunker really fast. But if they make a bunker really fast, you always have the option to distract them at the bunker with Hellions, and jump in their main with Reapers. Because even if you kill, I'm dead serious. If you kill like 3 SCVs or something like that, around 3 with your Reaper Hellion, even if your opponent went for like a greedier build, like a early CC, you're gonna already even up the SCV count. And then if you kill anything over like 3, you're just gonna get further and further and further ahead in terms of economy only. But not only that, if you go for the Reaper Hellion build, it lines up your tech at a very early pace in the game. So you're always going to be ahead tech-wise over someone who is going for a early command center. And if you're both going for Reaper Hellion, so if you're both doing the same shit and you're both going for tech build, it's just basically the reason why you do it is because it is the most cost-efficient way to be versatile about being defensive or aggressive, and also have quick tech with good economy. You cannot go like Marines with bunker and have the versatility of being aggressive. So that build kind of falls into problems where if your opponent is doing something that is super heavy tech-wise and you're staying low tech with like lots of Marines in a bunker, and then he siege pushes you with tanks and Vikings or something, you're going to have a really hard time dealing with that because you're just going to have no tech to deal with that. And if you play against someone who's really greedy, let's say they're as greedy as so greedy to be like the kind of guy who's fucking insane and he goes CC first, which is really rare. But let's say he goes 1 racks into double CC. He goes like 3 command centers off of 1 racks. He's fucking crazy greedy. These kinds of players you can't punish if you don't make Reaper Hellion. So Reaper Hellion, again, it's a cheap way to get your tech up and your economy up, and it gives you versatility to play defensive or aggressive. Early game is why you want to go for Reaper Hellion as a starter.
Yes, but like when opponent, so there are a lot of people who are playing like most likely the same build that I'm doing,
Sure.
and then they would have Reaper and Hellions as well.
Okay.
So what usually happens is either we meet middle in the map, or they are pushing me at my base, and they have 3 Reapers, 2 Hellions. I have 3 Reapers, 2 Hellions, and when we engage, I don't know what's the,
So here's a good idea. I got a good idea for you. Okay, this is what I do in my games. If you guys are both going Reaper Hellion, and you're going to be able to tell this based off your SCV scout, because you should always be SCV scouting, and you are more than there is a phase of the game as well in the early game before the factory pumps out a Hellion, and you'll know this if you guys are doing the same build. You'll know when his Hellions are going to pop out, because that's when your Hellions should basically be popping out. You'll be able to run around with your Reaper, and you can actually poke around and see what you can do with your Reaper. If you can somehow get a nice pick off, that's amazing. But you don't have to get too crazy. You can just like see maybe if you can do something like, if the guy's not going as deep into it as you are, maybe you can pick off an SCV at like a natural or something like that if he's trying to start a command center or something. Just, you can poke him with Reaper, but don't try to overcommit and lose the Reaper, essentially is what I'm saying. You can also run around mid-map before Hellions are out. But as soon as Hellions spawn, you don't run around map anymore, because Hellions drive faster than Hellions can run around. So you'll lose the Reaper if you're on his side of the map and he chases you all the way back to your side. The Hellion will chase you and shoot you down and kill you. So if you haven't really been able, all you've done is scout up until the Hellion part of the game, that's totally fine. If that's what happens, that's what happens. But then you could actually sit defensively on like a cliff or in front of your natural until you make a Cyclone. And then once you get a Cyclone, then you can move out. Because once you get a Cyclone out, and now you also start making Marines out of a reactor to buffer the Cyclone, you don't have to be threatened by a counterattack. And you could always, especially if it's a map with a ramp, if you sit on the ramp in front of your natural, you get first shot every time. And the chances of you losing the fight when you have first shot are incredibly low. Like, you would have to over micro and fuck it up really bad to not win the fight if you get first shot. Because you can stay on top, like, because the way the AI works is, if you're on top of a ramp out of vision and they're running up the ramp, even though you shoot them, they don't see you still until they actually run up halfway up the ramp. So and the attack speed of Terran units, especially Reapers, is pretty fast. So you'll just get your first auto attack while they're going up the ramp, and then their first auto attack is going to be the same time as your second auto attack. And since units die so fucking fast, you could potentially kill them super easy. Also, if they come up the ramp clumped up, your Hellions are going to be AoEing them. So what you want to do is you want to go in like a adjacent line to the ramp, if that makes sense. Like, you don't want to be in a line that's directly with the ramp. You want to be in a line that's opposite of the ramp, like that guards the whole top side of it, that looks down on it. You know what I mean? So it's not like a straight line, but it's like a T. You're the top of the T. He's the bottom of the T, going into your top part. Okay. And that would be a great way to play it out. And then once you have a Cyclone, you don't give a fuck anymore about your Hellion Reaper. It doesn't matter. All it is then is another scout. If you can kill shit with it, that's great. But if you have a Cyclone out and like 2 Marines buffering it, and now you're just making like tanks and Hellions and whatever, or sorry, not Hellions, tanks and Marines, like you're going into that whole play style, you can run into his base with your Reapers, and if their Reapers die, they die. It is what it is. His Reapers and Hellions aren't going to attribute a whole lot to him pushing you, because now you're going into the tank aspect of the game, and 3 Reapers and 2 Hellions aren't going to do a whole lot when you're trying to run into multiple siege tanks. They're just going to insta-die. So if you get into his base and you scout exactly what he's doing at that point, where you're like, oh, he's going 3 command center, he's going 5 racks off of 2 CC with a factory and a starport, or he's going double factory with 3 racks and a starport, or whatever. You get like you can compare what he's doing to what you're doing and get an idea on what he's going to be having, essentially, like how aggressive is he going to be. It's really all you need to know there. Like, does he have as much economy as me, or is he going way more production heavy? And then also, if you don't die going into his base, right, because he has something clamping the cliff, you could potentially kill a bunch of SCVs again, and that's totally fine. And that's just a win-win for you.
Okay. Cool.
And then, any other questions about the mid-game, or?
Mid-game is just, if playing standard, right, I realized that I'm not good at estimating tank ranges. Either I siege in range and all my tanks die, or I siege like way far from this tank line.
Sure.
And I know that you said you need to do, what's that called again? Leapfrogging, right?
Yeah.
But whenever I leapfrog, there's a chance that the tanks that are leaping forward is dying. So I don't know how to push the tank line. Sometimes I'm too scared to unsiege, and then the units just freeze.
Don't unsiege at once on everything. Unsiege individual tanks, and then you can leapfrog them very slightly forward. So, like, I'm gonna show you this, and I'll just put a visual out there. This will be a paint thing, and you can watch it if you want to, or if not, that's totally fine. You'll see it in a VOD though, anyways. But basically, and I'm doing it on stream, just so you know. But basically, if your opponent's siege tanks are all like scattered in a line, okay? Let's say his tanks are all like right there and the bottom of the screen, and your tanks are like this. Let's say you have and let's say the siege tank range for him is like this far, okay? That's about how far his tanks can shoot, like right there. This whole line right there. If you walk into that zone, you're gonna get shot by his tanks. And your tanks are kind of like this. And tanks have the exact same range as other tanks. So your tanks are like that. And then you have a tank right there, and you have a tank like right here, and you have a 2 tanks like right here and right here, and you're like, okay, I want to siege him, but I don't want to die. And then you're like, all right, well, okay, how about I unsiege this tank right here and I move it forward? And then you're like, okay, well, I don't want to go too far, so I don't have to siege really far forward, but what if I just go like slightly forward, like right there? And then you're like, okay, that's not in range though. Okay, let's grab this tank and let's go forward, slightly forward again. And then you're like, okay, that's still not in range. And you grab another tank and you're like, okay, let's take this tank up here and let's go. And then this is fine, because as long as you're still macroing during this, there's nothing wrong with this. It's not like you have to kill him for this to be effective. You're still zoning what's important behind this, most likely, which is like probably a command center in the back over here, just like mining minerals, right? That's what you're protecting essentially. So, or vice versa, same thing for him. And you're just trying to attack him. Either way, like nothing's really happening. No one's dying right now, so it's totally fine. But once you actually get a siege tank like this, that is gonna barely go over this line, okay? You're like that right there. You're now in the line. Or, okay, the fucking paint is terrible and it deletes the black line, so I'll remake it. So your tank goes in and it goes over the line, right? It's like, all right, now it's past the threshold. So what you can now, what that means is there is 2 thresholds of a tank. There is an attack threshold and there is a vision threshold of a tank. There is a dead zone of like 2 to 3, it's like 3 range on a tank, or ish, where the tank can't see as far as it can shoot. So right now you could be in his damage threshold but not in his vision threshold. So this needs one of 2 things. You need either an air unit to spot for you, or you need a scan. So if you get into the threshold, if you inch your way forward into a threshold, the concept you want to have, the best thing you can do for yourself is to scan right when that happens, or have like your Vikings, for instance, like off to the side or something like that, or like over here, just flying above and like your Viking cloud that's just in the area, that's just going to be like, we're spotting for the tanks, and that's totally fine. So that's ideally how you want to set this up. And if it takes you a really long time to set that up because you're really slow about it and you're not really confident about tank ranges, that's totally cool. Now, there is a concept that goes in with tank versus tank that you need to respect, and you'll lose all the time if you don't respect this. But you need to be aware of how many tanks it takes, or how many shots it takes for a tank to kill a tank. And that number is 3. And if you siege your tank, like let's say you siege 1 tank in range of 3 of his tanks, if you shoot him first and then he scans you, your tank will still die. Because if you're in range of 3 shots and you're only shooting 1 at a time, well, you need to have a lot of time where he's not going to see you before you kill a tank. And then you'd have to shoot 9 shots there with that 1 tank to kill 3 tanks. Whereas all he has to do is scan you once and shoot you 3 times, and then you're dead. So you got to be really cautious about how you set that up. Like, maybe try not to always siege in the middle of everything. Maybe if you can really think about it, maybe just zone. So if you really think about this concept, maybe just zone this kind of a situation, like go back here a little bit where you're out of the range of his tanks, right? And then you maybe take like a tank on the side and you inch this one forward like that, just off to the side. And now that tank is barely in range of just 1 tank right there. And then if you shoot first and he shoots right after you shoot, even if it's just 1 tank versus 1 tank, you're going to win every single time as long as you have full health. And if he also has full health, because you shot first, so you'll always shoot first. So when you shoot 3rd time, he's dead anyways. So that's huge too, about setting that up that way. And this is essentially what tank versus tank is like if you have to play the slow game. Now, this only matters, I'm telling you right now, this only matters early game, okay? You should not be playing this game late game. And you need to know how to play this. You need, the only reason why I explained it is because you need to know how to do it for it to make sense. And what I explained, does that make sense so far?
Yes.
Okay.
But a few questions. So the 3 shot doesn't matter what upgrades like
No,
anyone
it
has.
does not. A tank does 70 damage by default, and that is way more than enough to kill a tank, even if you're 0-0 the entire time. If he's 3-3 and you're 0-0, you will still kill him in 3 shots. And if he's 3-3, he will still kill you in 3 shots.
Okay. And when you mean early game, do you mean like 2 or 3 tanks, or like
So
first push?
what? Yeah, the first push essentially. Like if this guy's gonna be like really aggressive to you, and it's like, holy fuck, this guy's like in my face. Because if you're macroing, you're probably never gonna force this position, because you're gonna be having a lot of shit going on. But if he is not macroing and you are, and he's really aggressive, and he shows up at your base with like, let's say 4 tanks, and right now you only have 2, and your 3rd one's about to pop out because you're being way more macro oriented than he is, this might happen to you, and then you might have to play this game where you try to like zone, like, you know, control the area with Vikings and tanks, and, you know, get ready to take the fight and stuff like that. That could happen. But late game in general, one of the easiest ways you can play tank versus tank is if you have, so let's delete all of this, okay? Just delete it all. And now let's just make it really easy and go, your opponent has a tank line and you have a tank line. And neither player can really go across that line because everything just dies. And you guys are both sieged. What you can do in late game TvT is you can just hold the line. You can just be aware of it. Like this is going to take a little bit of patience and a little bit of like, I guess, awareness to a degree, where you just accept the fact that he's there and you're there. And a great way you can make this even easier for yourself to like make sure you're not going to get fucked over is make a sensor tower that will give a vision radius of everything in the area, so you can watch the red dots leave if he like goes out of your vision of your sensor tower, you know what I mean? And that's totally fine. But you just basically, you can zone your opponent defensively if it comes down to that. And if this game turns into something like this, you can just make more units, and the new units you make, just send new units to a base around the side of the map and go set up on some other base with some units. Because you don't have to play TvT by saying, how do I break the tank line? You can just stalemate the tank line and go create a new one somewhere else as well. That is kind of how TvT is going to be played as you are going to grow as a player. And
Okay.
if your opponent is impatient and he goes, you know what, I'm attacking that tank line, you have advantage, major advantage. And you know, this is totally fine. Like, you can literally leave like 5 tanks and maybe like 18 Marines or something like that. Like a good chunk of Marines and like 5 or so tanks in an area, and you could just be aware of the fact that he's there too, and you can just zone him and just hold the line. Uh, but a lot of times, what will happen, what should be happening in your TVTs, honestly, especially in Diamond, unless they're all inning you, if you're both, so if you're the we already talked about if they all in you, like it would be the other mini game you might have to play or something like that. But if they're macroing and you are macroing, a lot of times what will happen is you guys will both be unsieged as you engage each other in the middle of the map. Like, you guys will both be running around, and one of you finds the other one, and you guys just stim pack into each other, and then you tab siege your tanks or whatever, however you want to micro it. You siege your tanks in a line, and you stim pack your Marines. Now, when that happens, all you need to understand is, do not fucking run out of, like, let me say it like this. I'm gonna give you a left to right one because I feel like it would be easier to explain for me to draw it, I guess. I don't know. But let's say your tanks are here and his tanks are right here. And let's say you guys both have a line of bio. That is like his bio ball is right here and your bio ball is right there. Okay, so the blues are bio and then the red is his tanks, the green is your tanks. And let's say your tanks only range to right here and his tanks also only range to right here. So the worst thing you can do in this situation is allow yourself to take your the worst thing you can do in this position is let your bio line go like this. Like, you let's say you guys stim pack into each other and your bio line is where it is, right? And you, as you guys stim into each other, he pulls back and you chase him and you run into his tank range and you run out of your tank range. That is not what you want to do. All your bio's going to die and you're going to lose the fight. What you want to do every fucking time is you want to set up a bio line, and you always want to stim pack to make sure you're in front of your tanks every single time. You never want your tanks leading the fight in TvT, but you always want your Marines standing about right here. Like, you want your Marine, like if your Marines happen to be a little bit far forward, pull them back a little bit, back to your tanks, and let him chase you into the tanks. You always want him in your tank range and not the other way around. And if there are a lot of people in Diamond will fall for this, and they will walk into tank range, and they will die because they don't realize how important that is. And then if you kill all the Marines, you can then shove his tanks with no cover. Like, you could even load up 2 medevacs then and drop all over his tanks, because there's no Marines that are going to shoot you down anymore. So it's really all about setting up the fight, like stim packing in, making sure you can actually siege your tanks without watching them all die to Marines as your Marines are behind your tanks. So always shove forward, but if you shove too far forward, pull back. And then you're good to go. And then that's how most fights will go, and that's how they should go in mid-game TvT if you're both unsieging like that.
Okay, so in case where my Marine line lured his Marine line into my tank line and all his Marines died, what to do next? Like you said, like load up medevacs, but like, can I unsiege my tanks and push forward and then just stimp at the Marines and like start forward?
Let me show you really quickly. You can either watch the stream or I'll share my screen now for you. Let me show you what it looks like really fast, because this is just a super simple thing I can set up really quickly here. So if you have, I'm going to teach you something right now. This is micro. If you don't know about this yet. But if you have Terran versus Terran, I'm going to show you what it looks like when you have 2 battles, right? I'm going to have like, let's just say your Diamond opponent is the guy on the right. So I'm basically going to give you a live visual example of what the things I just showed you. So it makes sense, like with actual gameplay. So we have tanks, we have a lot of Marines, and then we have like 2 medevacs. Whoops, where are they? 2 medevacs, okay? And now upgrades, give me upgrades, cool. And now we have the tank siege. Right? And now we have the Marines versus the Marines. And now if both players run into the middle of the map here, that is siege tank moment where siege tanks will just grind everything to death. So if you put a Marine like in the area, as you can see, he just gets pounded by a tank, right? So this is like maximum range to not get by a tank. Same thing with this side. As you can see, it's same thing. Tanks will shoot Marines before Marines shoot each other. once they're set up, which is why you want to pull your Marines out of his tank line and into your tank line. Because if you don't do that, and you guys both just engage into each other, all that's going to happen is all your Marines are going to die, like this. Oops, oh my, I did not mean to hit that button, my bad. I'll show you like this again. It'll be like this. So if you guys don't, if one of you doesn't pull back, all that happens is you both lose everything, like this. Because you guys are both in tank range. And if you can help it, you don't want to be in tank range. And now it's just tanks versus tanks. So what you want to do is you want to be like, all right, how about when my opponent attacks me like this, I just go like this. Okay, he's coming towards me. And then you pull back to your tanks like that. It's just a little tiny move back. It's very subtle. It's not that hard. You just pull back for a second. You just, instead of walking, like, because there's no reason to stand in his tank range if you're still in front of your tanks. If you can stand, the only time you ever will lose your Marine still is if instead of his tanks being sieged here, if it looked like this. So if it looked like this, then you have no choice. Then obviously you have to stand in range because you guys are sieging on top of each other like that, right? There's no choice then. So if that happens and you guys are like right in each other's faces like that, all that would happen would be is just try to spread your Marines out if you can. Like I'll show you what it looks like if I'm red again. And I'm not going to siege the tanks until the last second. And when I do siege the tanks at the last second, I'm going to start greenboxing my Marines and spreading them out so I reduce tank damage because it'll make splash damage less impactful, okay? So let's put them all together again and get this shit hotkeyed so I can actually control everything at the same time. So now if we were to attack, right, it would be like, okay. And then take your Marines and be like this. Okay, spread out, spread out, spread out, spread out, spread out, spread out. Try to just spread your Marines out and then it'll make your Marines last longer over his tanks. And yeah, I mean, it goes either way. It's whatever. Yeah, that's the best thing you can do for yourself is try to mitigate because again, Marine damage versus Marine damage isn't the biggest deal. It's unless you have like 50 Marines and 2 tanks, then of course Marine damage is a big deal. But if your army is actually mostly tank, which this is, because right now we have 25 Marines and 10 tanks, and one tank is worth 3 supply, so that's actually more supply dedicated to tanks. Like tanks are just superior in this particular situation. So you really want to mitigate as much damage to the tanks as you can by spreading out against them with your bio only. And if you siege first, that's amazing. Now the final thing we'll say about this is how most of your games should look, okay? This is assuming this is what your game would, this is what most of your games will probably look like in my opinion, okay? Because you guys are attacking towards each other, and then you see, oh, he's right there, I'm right here, let's both siege, let's take the fight, and let's see how it goes. So it would look something like this. You guys attack, you see each other, you siege your tanks, you stim your bio, and you go, alright, pull my bio back to my tanks. If he falls for that, and this happens, and you're like, oh, cool, I just killed all of his tanks. All you gotta do now, do not do this. Do not go, okay, let's now attack into him. And then go, alright, now siege my tanks. As you can see, it didn't go very well. That went like absolute shit, right? You're like, oh wow, I did so well, then I did so poorly. That was really bad. What you want to do instead is you'd want to do something like this. So once again, assuming the situation starts over again, both players siege their tanks, both players stim their bio. You pull your bio back to your tanks, and then kill the Marines on it like that, if you can. You set it up again just like you did before. But now you go like this. Leave your tanks sieged and go like this. Alright. 2 medevacs. Boost over his tanks, and drop Marines all over them. Like this. And now all your tanks are still alive, and now you can push.
So, like, usually in the fight with the Vikings, and there is a chance that my medevacs are, like, gone.
Sure.
Like, if that's the case, and then I won the Marine fight, should I just wait until the new medevacs
If
come?
you... I would say this. This would be another answer I would say to you. If you're like, fuck, okay, well, I just own that guy in a fight, and I can't break him because of this right here. So now there's a bunch of Vikings, okay? Now we have a bunch of Vikings on both sides. And, I mean, if you kill the Vikings, because you're also making Vikings, that's wonderful. You can do that then. But if you don't kill the Vikings, and there's a bunch of Vikings and a bunch of tanks, I'll show you what it kind of would look like now as to what you could do in this situation. That would be totally fine. So, yeah, I'll show you right now. You could be like, all right, both players siege, stim, and you're like, oh, back up. And then he loses a lot of his Marines. And then he's like, oh, fuck, okay, back up. And you're like, all right, well, he's got a bunch of Vikings just like patrolling over his tanks and stuff, or he's just there. I can't really just boost in 2 medevacs into that, because if I do, this would happen, right? You're just like, oh, shit, everything's dead. So instead of sending those medevacs in, you could just go like this. How about you go like this? Take your group here and just be like, all right, how about I like find the tanks and just go like this. Shift click 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Control 1. Unsiege. Okay, I hit the wrong button. Sorry. Unsiege. Go somewhere else. You let a tank line sit there still, and you go somewhere else, and then you can just you don't have to be here for very long. Okay, you do not have to be here very long. You could, if this is an area that you're just controlling now, because he can't really walk into this very well either. You could even also leave some Marines there to guard your tanks in case he tries to like land Vikings on you. So if you left like that there too, like that would be ultimately the ultimate defense, where Vikings couldn't land on you and kill your tanks just like the Marines did. And your tanks could zone his tanks from pushing you. You could just go a different pathway and go to his base and set up a new attack on like his natural or something like that, or whatever. Just go set up a new army somewhere else. Like, TvT is a game of roadblocks, literally. It's like, oh, this road is blocked off. Let's go somewhere else. This road is now blocked off. Let's go somewhere else. Because if you don't do that, and this guy's like, you know what? I see this Terran player over here no longer has as big of an army as he did before. I'm going to push now. And you're like, oh, he's pushing me. Stay back my Marines and go forward. And he tries to siege. As you can see, it doesn't go very well ever pushing into tanks. Even though it was double the tank count right there for the blue Terran, you cannot fucking push into roadblocks. It is so scary. You take such bad trades every time. So dividing the map up like this is not a bad idea in TvT, and you cause such problems for your opponent when this happens. Now, if the armies don't look identical, like kind of like this, and you're confident you can take a winning fight, then that's a thing, right? You can really try to push him over the edge and kill him. But just know you always have the option to make a roadblock and go somewhere else while maintaining a roadblock. And that, if you can get good at that, that is a very high level tactic you can implement into your gameplay forever. It only happens more in TvT as you grow as a player.
Okay, so basically not to fixate on trying to take all the enemies or units. Try to control the map more.
Yeah, literally. And sensor towers are a great way to also help you with that, because you can see where he is before he's there, because you see him coming from like you can see like he's way the hell over here on the mini map before he's already like right here where he's gonna fight you. So it allows you time to set up a roadblock essentially. All right, so but yeah, like if you ever break the Marine count like that, and there's a lot of tanks there and there's not enough Vikings, you can also use your Vikings to attack his Vikings too, by the way. And his Vikings will shoot your Vikings as a priority unless he physically focus fires your medevacs. But that is a huge opportunity to, like you saw how the Marines dropped all over the tanks. That's fucking crazy. That's so effective. That's so cost efficient at killing tanks, because you're actually making the tanks kill each other then. Because his own friendly fire splash damage. So, go ahead. Sorry.
I was like, do you have? Can we go over the replay?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. 100%. Yes. Do you have one prepared already?
Yeah, I have one prepared.
All right. Let's talk about it.
This is the standard one that I think it's the opponent that did standard stuff and I lost. And by the way, when you say Ravens against battle cruisers, am I supposed to disable the battle cruiser with
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. You would want to disable it right as you're going to take the fight with it. It's so because disable is not a super long duration, and when something's disabled, it can still move command wherever it wants. It just can't attack or use abilities. So if the guy is like, let's say he teleports right here in your base, and then you're like, oh fuck, he's right there, and I need to run my SCVs away now, and all my Marines and stuff are down here, and my Vikings or whatever, or my Cyclone, and then now you start coming back. If he's right there and you are like way down here and your Raven comes up and you disable him and your Marines are like right there, that's a terrible disable because he's just gonna run away and then he'll come right back and then now you don't have to disable. But like potentially. But if you start like the second he's about to start shooting at your units, like your Marines or your Raven or whatever, like when it's all there, right then you disable him. All you get then is all this free damage as he tries to run away from you, as he can't attack you, and you're just capitalizing on it as he tries to run away. So you're like stutter stepping him down as he tries to get away from you. And you can just pump a fucking ton of damage into the BC, and that's how you shut it down. Especially when you have something like a Cyclone just drilling it with its missile lock on.
Okay.
Alright. Alright, and then let's see how things are going for you.
I feel like in general my macro got better comparing to the last time we talked.
Nice. That's good. Go ahead, sorry.
But still sometimes I cannot tell if I lost the game because I mismacroed or it's because of something else. Usually I could see macro gaps in my build when I look at the replay.
I would say you should always think every time you play the game and you win or you lose, you can make your macro better. Always think that. Like always try to do it better than what you did. Like, and I'm not saying that you have to think about it too hard. Just think to yourself like, what could I improve on this game? And it could be something as simple as saying, oh, I didn't make SCVs as much as I should have been. That's it. Or it could be something as simple as saying, is my build actually running smoothly? Like, am I actually setting things up where when I make this building, is it actually being utilized? Or it could be things like, did I supply block a lot this game? Or it could be something as deep as saying, did I keep macroing while I was moving around the map with units? And was I multitasking up to par? And work on it all the time, because I guarantee there's always going to be a problem. There's even a problem for me, and I'm already able to be GM. Like, every game. I could even fix my own gameplay all the time. And the more you realize that you can make it better every single time, the more you won't be complacent about what you're doing. And always, so the point is just always think you can macro better. Never think it's good. Always think, okay, I can make this better. I can make that better. Just keep always thinking about how you can make it better. And then try to implement that into your gameplay. And then obviously that's not the only reasons why you might be losing. There could be other reasons, like you took a bad fight or something, but yeah, always think your macro can be done more efficiently, because it can be. Okay, so you're scouting and you see he double depoted you out. That's totally fine. This already looks pretty normal. I would say your SCV should just turn around now and just go home. Otherwise, the longer you stay, the more likely you're going to wait too long until a Reaper comes out and kills you. And you are going home, so that is perfect. And then now you want to get ready to make that factory. Good job. And now we'll see what you're doing with the gas, but this is very important as long as you do it right. Okay. So I would say this right here is a little bit of a macro problem already. And there's two things. One thing is you want to make sure as soon as you have 100 gas, even if this guy's in the middle of building a building, just grab another SCV and start that. You don't have to build the factory right next to the barracks. That's totally fine. You could even build your factory right there. Because the only time you need to build your barracks next to the factory next to the racks is if you're going to swap over like on Hellion production with like a reactor for Hellions. If you're not going to do an add-on swap from the factory to the barracks, you don't actually need to build the barracks next to the factory. And you're not doing that with this build. So make sure, like right now, when you have 100 gas in the bank, you're just making that factory immediately. Now this guy happens to be free at this point in time, so that would have been totally fine for having him do it. That would have been fine. But you want to make that factory like as soon as you have 100 gas, because if you don't, you every second that goes by, you start losing control of the situation, and you're opening yourself up to also a lot of heavier aggression that might actually be happening. So as you grow as a player too, you'll notice that everyone doesn't do the same build all the time. There are some players that like to play very all in, and one build you will die to if you don't really prioritize your buildings early as fast as possible is like if this guy would have gone for a Rax wall-off like this, and then he just goes triple Rax Reapers. And he goes fucking ham on Reapers really fast. Your Hellions don't come out as fast as Reapers do, and you can totally die if you don't take it seriously enough. Like, so if we notice, you threw your factory down at, like, just to go exactly when you threw it down, your factory starts at 126 gas, right? Because you just took it. It's literally exactly at 0, and you have a 26 gas over. That's a pretty late. Like, it's like 2 seconds, 3 seconds, or more like 3 seconds late. And every second is really important about not dying in the early game of TvT. So really make sure you're getting that shit going as quick as possible. It helps a lot. It also gives you faster Cyclone as a follow-up to it all, and all that stuff. Just makes it easier not to die to all-in. So if you ever find yourself struggling versus all-ins, this is the reason why that's happening. It's shit like this. It's because if shit's delayed at all, for no reason, that sucks for you. Now, another thing that happened to you was your gas right here. Right now, you want to rip off three SCVs. And the reason why this is important is because you get no benefit now out of maintaining SCVs on the gas from now on, because you just made enough gas to make your next Reaper, which is great. That's why you need that gas. But now, what you need immediately after you make that Reaper is a command center. You now need to shift gears like 100% right now into making a command center as fast as possible. So if you don't do that, all that does is it delays your command center, and it's now going to delay your tempo going into the mid game, because it's a pretty big difference between having 10 or 13 SVs on the middle line right now, and it's a pretty big difference between having 6 SVs or 3 SVs on the gas. And if you get caught in the moment where you're like, well, I'm just going to spend more gas and make my starport before my command center, it's really going to delay your command center. Or if you still make the command center, but you have like 190 gas in the bank, or like 280 gas in the bank because you just kept waiting longer and longer to rip this off than you should have, it's just going to fuck you over. It's gonna just delay your build on all over again. And these are the little mistakes that add up over time that screw you. And like you ripped off. We'll see when you rip off, but we'll come back to that in a second. This is another one. You don't actually make another Reaper after the first Reaper. And this is another thing that would kill you. So at 204, this is another thing that could get you killed if you're getting all in and you don't do this. So 204, we'll remember that. SCVs get pulled off once you had like 90 gas or so. Like you just pulled them off just now. And this is a lot of gas to be pulling them off with. So that's another, again, probably like 5 seconds or 6 seconds of like extra gas mining. So if the factory was a little bit more prioritized and the gas was a little bit less prioritized after you got your shit right that you needed, and you could prioritize the command center better, these are all things that add up that make your macro better. And now, again, the Reaper was done at 204, right? We're already on 5 seconds of no production out of the racks. And now you start a Reaper at 212. So you waited 7 seconds after the first Reaper to make the second one. And again, this is something that could totally kill you if you're getting all in. These things will screw you so bad in the long run if you don't stay on top of them. And now another thing is the faster you get all this shit down, the faster you keep making Reapers, and then make your reactor, and then make Marines. You're going into the mid game at a better pace. The faster you get your Hellions out, and then make a Tech Lab and make a Cyclone, the faster you're going into the mid game. And the faster you get all these things out, not only does it set up your defensive situation better, it allows your Reaper and Hellion to be aggressive faster, and it could put you into a situation where you might even just straight up win the game due to a situation where you get into a good position with aggression at a fast timer that players in this league struggle with sometimes to get to, because they exactly, they have hiccups in their build essentially. So going forward, so those are like macro mistakes you can definitely work on and fix. Okay, and then I would say too. I don't really mind. Just keep in mind. I'm gonna say this right now. You can totally go 2 or 3 Reapers, and that's fine. You can also go 0, 1, or 2 Hellions, and that's fine. Now, let me explain why, okay? If you go, the less units you make, the faster you can transition into these add-ons, and then make the next version of what you want to make. The only thing you got to understand is, the less Hellions you make, the more you need to reprioritize your gas. So if you were to make like 1 Hellion and go into a tech lab right away like you did, I would actually say you should reprioritize your gas probably at like 14 SCVs. So, like on the mineral line is what I mean. So go up to like 14 and then reprioritize your gases into, or like maybe like 15 or 14 SCVs. So don't wait till you're 16 and then fill up the gases slowly. Like, get your command center started, and then once you finish your command center, drop back to like 14 or 15 SCVs and fully saturate your gas is what I'm saying, if that makes sense. Because this is more gas expensive now to do this faster. If you make like 1 Hellion or 0 Hellions. But if you make 2 Hellions, you can actually maintain 16 the entire time and then slowly fill in your gases, because that's more mineral focus.
The reason I made 1 is because I was supply blocked at 31.
That's also that's okay. I get it. That sucks. That's not ideal, right? But just know that is a real thing, though. Okay.
Okay.
Because like if look at the way you did it, right? Watch this. So look at your gas when you rip off. So go back a little bit further. So you ripped off to make your command center, and you went to 17 SCVs, or a little bit even further back. Jesus. Further back again. My God. Okay, here we go. So now you're undersaturated on the mineral line, and you're undersaturated on the gas, and you started the command center. This is correct. And then you fully saturate command center. And then you start to slowly fill in the gas. Right? You're just maintaining 16 the entire time. So what you just did there was correct if you made like 2 Hellions. And I know you're supply blocks, but yeah, but the point I'm trying to make here is if you did get supply blocked and that happened to be a thing that happened to you, start your depot and put fucking shit back on gas right away if you have to make a tech lab. Even if it means you're going to drop under max supply on, or max minerals on mineral line, max SCVs on mineral line, because you will never be able to afford your Raven and your Cyclone and all your add-ons if you don't do that fast. Because you can see it's done and it does nothing. It does nothing. It's finally doing something, but now it's doing something, and now your starport is doing nothing. Nothing. So it only makes sense to play it out this way if you're going to go double Hellion, because it really delays your gas expenses a little bit longer. So it just gives your SCVs more time to prepare the gas to then switch into this, essentially.
Okay.
Also, where's your Cyclone at? Okay, make sure if that ever happens in the future again, use your Cyclone. So I know there's Terran players who will like hit you with a Liberator or hit you with a Raven or something like that, but if he's actually aggressive to you, if he's 100% aggressive like this to you, never ever engage without your Cyclone. And the reason, here's why. This is why. If you overpower this army like crazy because you also have a Cyclone in it, which is crazy good damage, and he doesn't have one here, you will roll his ass over pretty hard, and then you can then counter him. And then your Cyclone can worry about dealing with air units or whatever. But if you just let your army fight like this and you trade, you actually gain no benefit, and all you're doing is you're wasting more time when you could be overpowering him, essentially. Like it's just like you're it's almost like having someone in a fight with you and you're only punching them at like half power when like they're trying to kill you, essentially, and you're like, okay, well, I don't want to hit this guy too hard. Like it's just, you really need to make sure you run his ass down into the ground here with that, and then worry about this, because he's already here. I would only agree with this if your Cyclone was here, if this didn't exist right now. If he was not, if like his Hellion Reaper was not in your base right now, And or if it was already dead, then your Cyclone's positioning would be correct. But yeah, I did get the point. You just gotta really make sure you use it defensively if he's already in your base with the shit.
Okay.
Because he just kills all your shit and he runs away anyways. So now it's another problem for you in the future. And the perfect time now. So honestly, your Cyclone as well should actually be, this is if you want to play it perfect in my opinion. Your Cyclone should actually be in front of your natural until your tank spawns. And then once your tank spawns, now you rotate him back to doing what he was doing before. You can like patrol the cliff or something like that. Because you want to make sure you can now guard the side of your base from all types of air units. But you want to make sure your natural's guarded because these SCVs will be super exposed if the Cyclone's not here as well. Like the Cyclone is a massive power unit that you can use early game. And then, yeah, once your tank's out, though, he kind of replaces the concept of what the Cyclone can do, and then you're fine.
Should I pair the Raven with the Cyclone?
Yes.
In the main?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The reason why I say yes to that is you have a higher chance to be having it useful that way because you can deal with Cloak Banshees that way. And most people aren't going to fly a Cloak Banshee over a bunch of Marines because there's a threat of scan. Most people want to fly a Cloak Banshee in the middle of nowhere and go over for SCVs. So if you pair the Raven with the Cyclone in the main, it helps you not get fucked by people who literally will Cloak Banshee you. That's really why you'd want to do that. But another thing you should do, always do this, whenever you set up tanks like this in front of your natural, and any base, if you have tanks, if you have a third base, you have tanks in front of your third base, always put a Marine like on the down in the middle of the open area, like on the white snow part, down the ramp, because the last thing you want to have happen is have no vision in front of you. Like remember that vision explanation I gave you in Paint with the tanks and how they can't see as far as they can shoot. You want to make sure you're seeing further than you can shoot, so you get like you get multiple ways to see it. Like you can physically see it, and you also get an alert going, "Oh, we're under attack," and your one Marine dies, but he died for a good reason, which is, oh, they're here. Now I need to be focused in this spot because now I'm getting attacked by a tank push or whatever. So now you're not going to just let him get, because the worst thing can let happen is let him get opportunity shots on your tanks, and you're like, oh shit, my tanks are dead. Well, then you just lose the game. The game's over and you're just dead now. But if he shoots your one Marine and kills your one Marine, and now your tanks are going to always have vision in the area because you do whatever you got to do to be there, maybe scan if you need to, and also bring your Raven back and things like that, that's totally fine. So you can always converge your army back together again, that's fine. But yeah, definitely make sure your Cyclone and Raven are in the main once you have your tank, and make sure you always have a Marine guarding vision radius for your tank. For awareness.
SCV ready. Ready for dust off. SCV ready.
And then, yeah, you're not making SCVs now at the natural. This is another hiccup here for you. You're not making units out of the starport, but you don't have any gas, which is understandable. That is understandable. It's because you went for a third CC. And I do think starport units should be your least priority right now with the way you're playing this build out. You're going very mineral heavy, so making sure your barracks are running, but like this one's not actually pumping, so make sure that's always happening.
Okay.
And yeah, both command centers right now aren't pumping. And that's what we're talking about too with that Reaper, right? He just got a free SCV kill and maybe even a second one. He got 2 SCV kills because your Cyclone was up here when the fight was happening, right? That's why it was a future problem again, so it's super annoying. So even though you're trying to play greedy, if you're not making SCVs and you're also losing SCVs, you actually have a negative economy over your opponent who doesn't even have his third done yet when you have 3 orbitals already done. So you've actually prioritized command centers faster than he did, but he's got more workers than you. And this kind of shit happens if you don't prioritize enough. And then if you do this with your third command center like you are, you got to really make sure you put a Marine like there and like there. And also another one like right there. And the reason why is because now you're exposing yourself more. I'm not going to say it's wrong to take a 3rd CC. And if you don't want to put Marines in the bottom right, 2 spots that I pinged just now, you can see my pings too, right?
I can see it on the stream.
Or, I mean, you could also even watch this on Discord. You can watch my perspective where my mouse is and stuff and my screen is. But either way, if you were to put less Marines on the map, that's okay too, but you have to supplement that with a sensor tower. Like, you need to know where he's going to push you from, because what you're doing with this command center is you're opening yourself up to a massive attack if you have no vision around it. And if he just shows up because you had no idea, and then he sieges your command center and he starts taking that area, he might even kill the command center, or he might just kill all your SCVs, or bad things will happen essentially. It won't be good for you.
Okay.
Vision is actually one of the biggest key elements to winning TvT. It's so important to know where shit is and to be setting up roadblocks.
You want a piece of me, boy? SCV ready. This better be good.
The spy blocks are definitely kind of screwing you. I would say, just to make your life easier, the first 3 depots are going to be something you got to do from memory. Like, first depot, then racks, then depot again, and then make a factory, and then depot again. But after you make the first 3 depots, and then that'll be when you start your, your command center will give you supply, and that's when you start your 3rd command center, all that stuff. Once you have the three depots down, and then you got your supply from your command centers, that's when like you start making units out of your 1-1-1 setup, and then you start making more racks. From that point on, I would highly recommend you just do this, okay? Forever. Always have one SCV that never mines minerals anymore, and you just always go build depot, build depot, build depot, build depot, build depot, build depot. Just have one SCV having a job to literally be a depot guy the entire time. So when as soon as he finishes the job, you start another one.
Okay.
Because that'll help you a lot about fighting supply blocks, and that's been a huge problem for you so far this game too. Okay, so your spotter just died, so got to be careful about that now. So like right there, or for instance, like right here, when your spotter dies. I'm glad you put one out there, by the way. That's super. This is important as fuck to do this. I'm really glad you put one out there. But like, let's say you're playing the game, right? I'm watching your perspective now and your camera. You're playing the game, doing your thing, building your stuff, put another spotter out there. Super nice. Right there. You just confirmed there is a push there. The goal now, and you see the tanks, you see the Marine. The goal now would be aware of where the push goes and zone it out. So you need to unsiege your tanks right now, and you need to re-siege them, like right almost where your Marines are with the Viking and the medevac, like under the ramp. And you need to like, because right now what's happening is if this guy decided he wanted to go to your 3rd base, he totally could. If he decided he wanted to go into your natural and push into your natural command center, he totally could. And the reason why is because he has 3 ravens. Sorry, he has 3 ravens. And he has 5 tanks as well. This is a lot of shit. And he could disable your tank that's already there, which is the 1 tank, because your tanks are so isolated right now. And he could just run you over and bust the base open. So, if the more you have together, the harder it is for him to do this. And then also, if your Raven was together too, you could actually disable his Ravens with your Raven too, and take away some of his disables as well. So that way your tanks don't get so disabled and shit like that. But, and then your advantage also would be stim pack here. So if your tanks were together and you got some shots off and you stim packed him down, that's your advantage, where you could actually potentially run him over before he gets a siege off on you. If he's going to aggressively push into your siege. Because right now, the trade-off is you have stim, he doesn't, but he's got more tanks and Ravens than you do. So he's got more mech stuff, you've got more bio stuff, essentially, in terms of investment. So, but if you do nothing here, if you just don't react to that at all, you're opening yourself up to taking a lot of damage. Okay, so he sieges there. Thank God for you for that, because if he went further forward, he could have. Because there's nothing to be afraid of with tanks if you just disable them. Okay, so you're starting a siege in this area. I would highly recommend you unsiege that tank in the natural, and even the second tank in the natural that's sitting there, and you get over here. Now, another thing you got to do is you have a reactored starport. He also has a reactored starport, but you need to try to use your Viking to like give you spotting here. Because again, you thought that this is now an aggressive push from the Terran. This is now the tank game of if you can guard the area with tank and marine, or sorry, tank and Viking, you can zone him from pushing into you. I'm not telling you to push him and kill him. Stop him from pushing you though, by controlling it like that. And your advantage right now, if you're going to make a roadblock, if that's your idea, a cool way you could deal with this would be keep your marines defensive until you have your roadblock set up. And then once your roadblock is set up, you could honestly either just like grab all your marines and have them go down to his base and attack him, literally, because he's fully attacking you right now. And you could counterattack him with marines right now if you wanted to, if you set up a roadblock. Or you could even just load up like one medevac and go down to like his natural and drop his natural. Your advantage right now is in marines, so thinking about how you can use them to your advantage is what you should do. His advantage is in Raven tank, so his advantage is thinking about how he can use that. And the way he's using it right now is definitely his advantage because he's setting up a siege push on you as best he can. But your advantage is like you can't push marines into that, you'll die. But look at his base. It's so exposed. His main is exposed. His natural is exposed. His third base does have some units there, but I'm not telling you to, like, if you saw that, you could avoid it and go somewhere else. He's got no medevac supporting it. He's got no stim pack. You have stim pack. You could honestly wreck a mineral line so bad right now. And then if you wreck a mineral line and you're still just making marines, like you don't have to like rally your racks all to his base right now and go kill him. Just do like a drop or like 15 marines and just walk to his base on the right side of the map because he's currently guarding the left side with a roadblock. And then you could actually fuck him over with a like run into his natural with stim pack and just, you know, go ham, kill a mineral line. And even if all those marines die, it's not the end of the world because you have so many reactors right now and you're only going to make more and marines are very replaceable. It's totally fine. And then he can't really push you either because you have tanks and your own Raven and your Viking. And then you're still making more units to guard the area. It's really identifying who has what advantage. Because you guys are not doing this. You guys are doing Marine Tank Medevac together and Viking and shit. But you guys are not doing the same build. He's doing a mech-focused Marine Tank Medevac version. And you're doing a bio-focused Marine Tank Medevac version. You're doing a build that supports stim pack fast and reactors on racks fast. And he's doing a build that supports constant starport and factory usage with minimal marine investment. Because as you can see, he's got, in terms of buildings, he's got 2 barracks, and his stim pack is still not even done yet. It's 30 seconds, or like 23 seconds out from being done. But your combat shield is already your combat shield's going to be done before his stim pack's even done. So you're going to have stim pack and combat shield before he even has stim pack. And you also have double NG bays, and I guess so does he, but yeah. But I mean, you've definitely done. It's just a difference of build, and if you can identify this, the easiest way to look at it is going, okay, well he's got a lot of Ravens, and he's got a lot of tanks. Why does he have so many tanks and Ravens over me? How does this make sense? It's because he's not investing his gas into as many add-ons as you are, as fast as you are, and he's also not investing it into the upgrades of bio as fast as you were. Like you've just done more with your gas for your Marines than he did. Which is the trade-off was he did more with his gas for his factory units and his starport units.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
I think it's because I macroed back. That's why he had more.
Go
tanks than I had.
macro.
It's not
Share
always.
that Marco knowledge vibe muta vibe muta.
Thank you, Clark. It's not always like that. I'm not gonna lie, you did have some macro problems this game though. Like that did happen.
Yes.
But
Yes.
it's also because you didn't prioritize your factory units like he did. You instead prioritized your barracks, and you made more barracks than he did faster than he did. And you also, basically, this is the best way to explain it. he did a gas build and you did a mineral build.
Yes.
So everything he had should have been behind you. His marine count should be initially ahead of yours because he stays on a reactor the entire time. But then right around when you get to like 16, 18 marines, you should not only pull ahead of him, but you should massively pull ahead of him because he won't have as many reactors as you do pumping marines as fast as you do. And he also shouldn't have as much SCVs mining minerals as you do. So you should definitely pull ahead of him in marines as time goes on. And then you should be ahead of him in upgrades for marines in terms of like combat shield, stim pack, all that shit. So your advantage is there. But he never stops making ravens and tanks. So he needs to do things like for instance, if you look at the replay, if we were to go back, your natural doesn't take your gas at your natural until you're almost fully saturated. Like you took gas pretty late there. But he probably took gas at his natural like right when it started, like right when it landed or right when it finished and it was ready to go, gassing it already. Because he's going crazy gas expenses here. This is 600 gas in the Ravens, and this is like 800 gas in the tanks. Or like 700 gas in the tanks, and like another 75 in the Viking, and like another 100 in the medevac. This is like 2,000 gas here for units. And you do not have 2,000 gas worth of units yourself. You probably have like 1,000 gas worth of units. So you're definitely a lot lower in that regard. But yeah, I mean, like now you also have a 4th command center that's done, and his 4th command center is just now starting. You're definitely the mineral focused guy. So it really comes down to identifying that concept and going, how can I use my advantage to my difference to my advantage? And counterattacking him right now would be a great way to do that, because if he's got all of his gas at your base, you can just roadblock it and then send all your mineral to his base. And then use your gas to roadblock, because as you saw in the examples I was giving you a minute ago, it's really hard to break tank roadblocks with walking into them when they're already sieged. Now, this is kind of scary. The Ravens do make it kind of scary, because Ravens are actually exceptionally good at breaking tank sieges, because they can disable and shit like that, and also turrets are really good. But that's why I was saying, don't send your whole army down there. Just send like an initial round of Marines and maybe even a medevac, and then call it a day. And then all the new units you make, reinforce your roadblock. That way, because again, you don't need to send like 50 supply down here to break this. Just like 10 supply. Like 8 Marines and a medevac fly in right here, land, stim pack. If he doesn't evacuate, every ACV dies. And then if he comes back here with this, these guys don't have stim pack, you just load up, boost, go here, drop here, be annoying as fuck. So far, how you feeling about things? Do things feel weird, not make sense, or how you feeling?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's like he's investing in the power, but he's going to be slow. But
Yep.
I invested in like mobility,
Yep.
so I shouldn't clash into him.
100%.
I should do a hit on his eco, right?
That's very correct. 100% correct. The fact that you understand the power and mobility concept is, I don't know if we talked about that before, but that's huge.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah.
You mentioned that.
So right here, if this is your auto turret, this is not what you should be doing right now. Because it's going to do nothing. And all you're doing is you're weakening your fortification here, your roadblock essentially, because you're wasting energy, and you're also peppering damage into your units. You had a Marine go in there and die just now. It might aggro more Marines to go in and die, like that. Your Raven just took some hits from some Marines in the Viking. Your Viking might also take a hit or two, and then you're also I think I said this a second ago, but yeah, you're blowing energy out of the Raven. You're becoming weaker by giving him an edge, and you're also giving him confidence at the same time, because if he watches you do something like that and then he just completely slaps it, and you do nothing but just take damage essentially, he might just pull the trigger and just push into you now and be like, am I actually just going to run this guy over? So you're actually kind of giving him a confidence booster here to push you, which he definitely could, because this guy could have pushed a lot now, like multiple times here, because your tanks were so scattered early on, and they still kind of are. This is fucking scary for you. And now that's shitty for you too, right? Because you sieged in range of a tank. Like, just be very, it's really just like it's like a tourniquet. Treat this like a tourniquet. Be like, all right, you have that area. I don't need it. I will make sure you never take that area. So put your tanks in like, this tank is greatly positioned. Maybe even a little bit further back would be fine. But yeah, it's still good because it's guarding the ramp, not guarding the high ground. This tank, way too fucking close to the high ground. Because you're going way... Your tank range is going deep into the fucking high ground area with where you sieged it. You want to make... Because you got to think about a tank in a circle, right? Not just in like a straight line going there. So definitely would want to have that tank, instead of sieging it there, would want to have sieged it like right there. So you would be guarding like that far right there onto the ramp again. Because you just want to roadblock the ramp.
Previous mindset about tank lines was to sneaky peeky into the range but not the vision, and then just do raider and then kill everything else. But apparently that's not.
That's good when you have a way to either, if you're confident that you have more scans than him, or if you're confident that you have air control over him. That's really, like, air control is really the big one, though. Because if you have scans over him and he's got air control, it doesn't even matter. You'll run into his tanks and he'll siege you and kill you. Because he sees you the entire time. So, let me say, like, the scan thing, it only matters, honestly, when neither of you have air control. That's really what it comes down to. If neither of you have air units, then it comes down to scans. But if one of you has air control over the other, you should never try to push his tanks with your tanks if you're the one who does not have air control. And right now, you don't. He's got 3 Ravens and Viking, and you have 1 Raven and 1 Viking. He definitely has air control over you. So all that's going to happen then is you're... that's power, too, right there. Tanks and Vikings are power. Marines are mobility. So that's you, again, playing to your non-advantage of you're playing a power playstyle with a mobility army. You're slowly building power like he is. It's just you're doing it at a later pace than he is because you invested into mobility first. So you would have had a better chance to kill him if you would have seen him coming and he didn't see you, and you would have stim-packed... Like, so let me say it like this. This is the only way you actually should ever fight this army head-on is if he is completely unsieged. And you, like, he's in a blob right there. Like, or like right where he is. Let's just say his army's in a really tight blob. He's unsieged and he's walking at your base. And you see that and you know he's there and you get the first siege. And you siege as he's coming in range of your tanks, and then he realizes what's happening, and he starts sieging his tanks after you siege yours. But also, at the same time, he sieges his tanks. He starts to siege his tanks as your Marines are stim-packing and shooting him down. If he's, like, reacting to you just running on top of him with a bunch of stim Marines and sieging on top of him, that's the only time you should ever take this fight.
Okay.
Because that would be the way mobility could beat that, essentially. But if he already sieges first, do not fucking try to fight that. That's going to be a bad situation for you. Try to zone it instead of fight it.
Okay.
And then, because again, you can force so much of a reaction here with if you just did a counterattack. And once you have enough time, like once you roadblock it out for a while, here's the beautiful thing about mobility, okay? So, power is stronger, power-wise, than mobility early on. And you're playing a mobility style. But mobility turns into power as well later on, and then it doesn't matter anymore. And then it could be the minigame of Viking versus tank, and you guys could both play that game if you want to. Because, if you remember what I said, every time you expand again, you pair it with like 2 more barracks, add in another factory as well, go to 2 factory production of tanks. Once you get to that phase... Now you're fucking power as well. Now you have like full power production pumping for you. But you definitely got to be careful about getting there because you're not there yet. Okay, now you watch him leaving. So this is scary again. You really need to have either a sensor tower or a Marine standing here or something. You gotta have some more vision, because if he rotates on you and now he sets up right here, the worst thing that happens is if he sets up in the command center and now you can't push that because you don't have power, but also you can't save this because it's already there. That is the worst. So if you never scout and never relocate this, that's a problem for you. If he pushes, and it looks like he's pushing. So you scouted, good. Now you gotta relocate quickly. You're taking way too much time to relocate. Like, you stop there a couple times, and There's just not enough urgency there for you. And I would say, whenever I don't, it's hard to say. Like, there needs to be a lot of urgency here. Okay, like let's watch and see how long it took. Because that just kind of sucked for you right there. That's a bad. Like, that already was a bad position. We'll go back to it in a second. But like he's right here, right? And now you start getting shot right now. Like he's there, and your army needs to immediately. You need to be unsieging right now, like within a second of this, and moving. The reason why is because you should already have been expecting this to be a thing he was going to do, because he left, and he's probably going to rotate, because he's playing a power style that wants to push you. Like, there's two things about it. Number one is he's being aggressive. So if someone who's going to be aggressive is going to keep being aggressive. That's just tendencies of a player. Because some people play aggressive with mobility as well, and they just like to be super aggressive with mobility. But the thing that's really scary for you is he's an aggressive player, but he's also using a power army, which is something that you need to fucking zone like you did here. Because if you don't, and you let it get to your base first, you're dead. The game's just going to be over. Like, you're going to take such a massive hit there. It's going to be such a big problem for you, and you're going to get in such a bad spot. So your Marine took damage and died at 27. And since 27, it's been 10 seconds now, and you've moved from here to here. So this is a lot of time going by that you're not capitalizing on. And now you're allowing him to siege on. This is now fucked for you. Because even if you siege right here, this is compromised now. You are now compromised. This is the worst thing you can ever let happen. So you sieging into him is incorrect. This is going to die. The correct thing to have done would have been to have had your tank sieged here and here before he got here. And you zone him. You roadblock him. Or if you're gonna stim at him and attack him, it would have been correct to have attacked him when he's right here, when he's got nothing sieged, and you're gonna run over him because you're expecting it to happen. But if you stim at someone like this and he's already sieging, and you're also running into his tank range, you're never gonna kill the tanks. He's gonna kill all your Marines, and he's gonna still be compromising your command center because his tanks are in a compromising position for your command center, and yours can't guard it where they're located. So this is why TvT is so fragile, and you're fucked now. Like, the second I hit play, I already know all your Marines are going to die. And now they're dead. So, does that make sense?
Yes.
And I'm going to ask you one question really fast. Do you know why your Marines all died? There's one answer here I'm looking for that's very specific.
Because they're in the tank range?
That's part of it, but not exactly. The reason why... Or go ahead, if you want to try one more time.
Clumped up together?
That's also not part... That's part of it again, but not exactly. The reason why your Marines died, and why that was shit for you, is because you're stimming into a tank line that is bigger than yours. Because he's playing a power style, which is why you should never stim into someone who's already sieged like this if they have more tanks than you. You're going to die every time. So, go ahead.
So looking at the replay, I kind of remember what I was thinking at that time, because that tank at the top is I feel like it's the only one which can hit my base. So what I was thinking was, if I can stim and take down the tank and then come back, maybe I could save the base. But apparently that is a wrong idea.
Well, you're just kind of fucked as well, though, because tanks have such far range that the only way that would ever work is if you were there when he was also still unsieged. Like, he would have to be driving around for you to do that. But as soon as he started sieging, if you haven't already made contact with the tank, by the time he turned the siege tank mode on, like, and he's starting to put his siege mode up, you'll never have enough time to get out of there before he just drills you.
Okay.
So there's two ways to get out of the situation that you're in right now. Number one would be expect him to do it and get him zoned out with your tanks before he even gets in range to kill you like this. Just like you did over here, but you do it now on this side. So you actually zone him from the south of your command center because your tanks are in front of your command center. Like, actually not allowing him to have his positioning on you. That's one way you could have not let this happen to you. Another way you could have prevented this from happening to you, or rather, sorry, we already talked. Like we already talked about how you could have just pushed him, right? When that's a different story. We're not going to talk about that anymore. if this happened to you, another thing you could have, another option you could have had, which would have been not great, but it's the second best alternative, as opposed to what just happened, which is just losing the game, would have been, oh fuck, okay, well I took too long to zone him. Now this position's bad. Lift off the command center and go to back to top middle, like 12 o'clock position with it, and evacuate. And zone him, try to go back to the zoning idea again and start over. And don't let him get on the other base now. And don't let him go further than he is now. And there is a possibility he might kill 3 o'clock. That might happen, but if you try to defend this the way you set it up, like, we'll go back to the point when you were fucked here. So it's still doable. Still doable. Still doable. Still doable. Still doable. Still doable. You're fucked now. You are now fucked. And the reason why you're fucked is because you've waited too long to react. And your tanks are not only waiting too long to react, they're also way too far out of position. You have tanks all the way up in your natural right now that are so far up there. And you're just too far away for where he has been spotted. So how can you fix this specifically to give yourself more time? Instead of having your Marine where it was, if you're going to have your tanks super far away like this, put your Marine up on the high ground where he was a second ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
so essentially a race between his army and mine.
yes.
Who gets
The 100% exactly correct. The number I'm calculating here is the travel time from his tanks to your third command center to your tanks to your third command center. And right now, he's closer. His majority of tanks are closer to your command center than yours are to zone him. Because the reason why is you're still sieged with the ones that are close, and they're unsieging. And it's like not even going to move yet. And like it's only also 2 tanks versus 5, which is also scary. But your tanks in the natural haven't even unsieged either. And they're also even further away as well. Like if this guy just beelines it and sieges you, there's no way you stop it now. So you haven't reacted fast enough.
Okay.
And then now, all that's going to happen is your whole third's going to die. And then now there's nothing you can do. At this point, you are absolutely fucking boned. Because this dude has had nothing to hiccup his production. And you will never, like, you could still theoretically win this game if you play the most turnally efficient game of your life. Which could happen. But you are so, it is going to be so hard now. You have basically a mountain to climb now. You are so far behind at this point, and it's going to be a real uphill battle because the way TvT goes is you guys both have a choice. If you're like Marine Tank Medevac and Viking is a style that eventually happens over time, but you have a choice on how you want to open about it, whether it be mobility or power. And you're at this point in the game now at 10 minutes, you guys are both developing into Marine Tank Medevac and Viking. That's just what's happening now. But you can't actually afford it anymore because now you've been stunted and he can. So now you're fighting a guy who can play both on you. He can play mobility and power. He's got all of it. But you don't have either because you can't produce anything anymore because you have no money. So this is when you're just in a super hard spot. The only way you can now make this work is if you now go back into power, defensive power, and you just completely abandon mobility, which is super hard for you to do because you open mobility. So now you got to shift gears entirely because you're never going to win a fight with him thinking that you're going to overpower his Marines with your Marines. It's never going to happen. You should still make Marines, but you're never going to overpower him, so you should never be the aggressor. You should be the guy who always is defensive powering up his shit, and you always prioritize tanks and Vikings first, and then any excess after that goes into Marines. But you're super dead now from what happened here. And then he even spots your 4th, which is even more damaging, right? And now he's going to kill this base too. And this just sucks for you because that's another dead economy. That's just brutal. And then he's going to kill your 3rd again if you're not going to move your tanks again because you're once again allowing him to zone you. Okay, he didn't actually take advantage of it, so it lives. But now, as you can see, his supply is so high, and even though he's got a lot of tanks and ravens and shit, he's got a lot of Vikings now, he's got a lot of Marines to support it, he's got a lot of everything, because he's now both. So, yeah, preventing this situation from happening, and now you're being aggressive, you're dead. Like this, you were already kind of dead anyways, but this guarantees you're dead. There's zero chance this works because he is going to have, he could actually not even have these tanks and still kill you because of how much of everything he has now. He could kill you with either side of his army. If all the Marines disappeared and he sieged, he'd win. If all of his tanks and Vikings went away and he just attacked you with Stimpak, Marines, and Medevac, he'd win. It's just too big now. So the only chance you have is if you don't ever get caught in the middle of the map, like what's about to happen, and instead you always are sieged defensively, and he takes stupid trades and allows you to slowly eke your way back into the game. It's the only chance you would have had. So, all the stuff we just talked about, questions, things make sense, or how are you feeling?
Yeah, like I understand all the concepts, but you know, when you play a game, sometimes you don't realize you think about the concept because you're too busy doing something else. It's probably because my mechanics is not up to, you know, pace. One question though, you mentioned that to build supply depots from the fourth one, just keep making them.
Yeah.
The way I build depots right now is if I have 2 bases, I build 2 at a time. If I have 3, I build 3 at a time, and then I'm not sure if that's a good idea or I should just go with what you mentioned. Also,
that would be okay. It would be okay. You're gonna get your supply cap pretty fast that way though, because you're also gonna realize you're also building command centers. You're not actually stopping. It would make more sense to do what you just said if you weren't gonna keep making command centers after 3 bases, because then if you were just gonna add a bunch of barracks and stuff and power nonstop and that's it, like you're gonna go to like 8 racks on like 3 base, that would make more sense for that. But if you're gonna keep making expansions, command centers are also gonna give you a fuckload of supply. So I would say probably do 1 depot at a time, honestly, until you're on 3 bases. Like once you're starting your 4th, essentially. Once you start your 4th, then you could do like 2 at a time, and then do 2 at a time until the end of the game. And you should never supply block with the way you're playing this out.
The first one, right? Second one, and then the third one is right after the factory, or it's like their number that you usually do it.
The third command center.
The third depot.
Do the third depot, yeah, when you have enough money to not stop production out of your command center and your barracks, and after you make the factory.
Okay.
Because you're... Hold on. You're making a barracks, or you're making a gas and a depot, and then you're making a barracks, and then you're double gassing it, so you're making a factory, and then you're actually making a command center first, and then you're making a depot. Sorry, it's actually CC before depot. Right? Because if you make a third depot first, it means you're not going to make a command center until after you make a bunch of Hellions, which is super fucking late. So yeah, you're making, like right now, you're going to make your factory, and then you're going to make your command center when you take SCVs off.
Yes.
Right here. You make your command center. And then now, when you have enough money to not... This is exactly when it... Right now is when you want to make a depot. When you have enough money to make your SCV, your Hellion, and your Reaper. And you know that if you make that depot, you're not going to have to wait to make the next thing. It'll be really soon to this point. Like, it might be at like 240.
So it's like 23, 25.
Yeah, around like 25 supply. Honestly, like 25 supply. Like maybe 25, 26. Because your next SCV is going to start and your Hellion's going to start as well. And then you could throw down a depot and then make your third Reaper.
Cool.
You could also make that a reminder too. Make your third depot with your third Reaper. Literally, that would be like perfect timing. As long as your Reapers aren't for some reason super fucking slow. Yeah. And then... Yeah, just don't be afraid to counterattack, honestly, with Marines. The biggest way to identify a Terran player, genuinely, count the tanks when you see them. Like, look at the tank, like, go, wow, that's more tanks than me. Or, oh, that's more Ravens than me. That's power. If he's got more mech than you, that's power. If he's a Terran player that has a lot of bio just like you do, that's mobility. And mobility is instead of being so stacked up, I'd say maybe put like 1 tank in your main, 1 tank in your natural, and then have Marines that can shovel or shift between the two, because then you got to be worried about like he might try to drop your base or something, right? He might be way more active about trying to get like shove you hard and get in your base quickly.
Okay. Yeah, that actually answered the question that I had, like how to handle drops, but it actually falls back into I need to identify which playstyle he is.
100% accurate.
Yeah.
Yep. Because if you're playing like a defense against mobility against power, and you're like, all right, I got 3 tanks scattered, and he's got 5 tanks pushing, you're fucking dead. But if you got 3 tanks stacked versus 5 tanks pushing, you have a way better chance to not die. But if you have 3 tanks stacked versus a Terran player who drops a different base, you're dead again. So yeah, spread out versus mobility and stack up versus power.
Okay. Cool.
And then again, I do mean this when I say this. It's something you should think about. Do not be afraid to counter if he's a power player. Like, just take 1 medevac of Marines and go drop his base. Go hit him mineral line. And you'll be like, holy fuck, this just wins games.
Okay.
All right, dude. Well, good luck. Thanks for doing a coaching lesson again.
Thank you.
And I hope it helps, and I look forward to talking to you again next time.
Yeah, I'll see you next month.
All right. Take it easy, man.
Okay. See you. Bye.
Bye. All right, guys. That's been Shangy. Thanks, Shangy, for doing another lesson. Appreciate you. And guys, thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you found it informative and you learned something. But yeah, I will see you guys in the next coaching lesson or the next video, whatever it might be, whatever you want to watch. Good luck and take it easy. Much love, guys. Peace.